Binding is almost like an instant finish. It's more than a turned back edge. It's different from a facing, and it can change the whole mood of a garment. Today, I'll show you some bindings and tell you how to apply them. On this silk t-shirt, a bias strip was cut, stitched, turned, and then hand-stitched to finish for a nice edge. The same technique was used on this felted wool vest. If you want a relaxed, deconstructed look in a binding, it can be as simple as this gauze vest, where a raw-edged strip of fabric was wrapped over the edge and stitched through all layers. Here, for an entirely different look, grosgrain ribbon was folded over a net edge to bind the tiers on this novelty skirt. You can buy packaged, pre-cut, and folded bias tape in a variety of fold configurations for bindings. These pre-folded tapes often have one side longer to make it easier to catch both sides as you stitch. The longer side goes on the wrong side of your fabric. You can also buy binding by the yard and designed to fold down the middle to easily encase a raw edge while you sew it in place. Here's a common mistake we've all made. Be sure to cut off the seam allowances before you bind the edge. Otherwise, your proportions will be all off. Here's how to bind an edge with bias strips you've cut. It's easier to bind around curves than to miter binding around pointed corners. You can adjust your pattern to simplify the binding. Decide how wide you want your finished binding and cut your strips 8 times that width. Fold the binding wrong sides together and stretch as you press it. This also makes the binding narrower. Next, trim it to 3 times your finished binding width plus 1/8 inch. Align the binding's raw edges with the garment edges on the right side. Stitch the binding width away from the edge. Press the binding toward the edge just along the stitching. Roll the binding fold to the wrong side to cover the stitching line. Now you can either hand sew the binding to the wrong side with a slip stitch or pin it to use a fusible tape like Steam-A-Seam to hold it while you top stitch from the right side, making sure to catch the edge on the wrong side as you go. Bindings are an easy way to add a lot of pizzazz to a garment without an enormous effort. It's just one more way you can invent and design with your sewing. See you next time.